On the night of February 1, 1959, 9 experienced hikers set up camp on the icy slope of Kolatsyakla Mountain. The local Mansi people called the Mountain of the Dead. Winds screamed across the ridge at nearly hurricane strength, but the group stayed together, joking, writing in their journals, and preparing for the final push of their expedition. None of them knew that this would be the last night they would ever see. Before sunrise, something forced the hikers to cut their way out of the tent from the inside and flee into the darkness half-dressed, barefoot, and terrified. To this day, no one knows what drove them out. But every explanation only leads to more horror. Before the tragedy struck on February 1st, we must go back to the very beginning. January 23, 1959, the start of an expedition that would soon become one of the most chilling mysteries in the Ural Mountains. 9 experienced hikers set out from Sverdlovsk, eager to conquer Otorten Mountain. They were well prepared, seasoned in winter survival. Yet the forest seemed to watch them as they crossed snow-laden trails and icy rivers. Their laughter and camaraderie masked the foreboding stillness of the wilderness. Little did they know, this peaceful journey would soon turn into a nightmare that would haunt history forever. With the Dyatlov group already on the trail, they pressed further into the unforgiving Ural wilderness. Spirits remained high and laughter occasionally broke through the cold, but the mountains were beginning to show their true face. Snowdrifts grew deeper, the wind more biting, and each step demanded more effort. The isolation was absolute. No other humans, no shelter. Only the relentless cold and endless forest stretching in every direction. As night approached, the group sought a place to rest, unaware that the mountains had already begun to set the stage for a journey they would never return from unscathed. The expedition had already faced harsh terrain, but the real mysteries were only beginning. Locals spoke of unusual lights on the horizon, strange animal tracks, and eerie sounds echoing through the valley. Some members of the group grew uneasy, whispering of omens and warnings that none could explain. As the group pushed deeper into the forest, the terrain became increasingly treacherous. Trees bent unnaturally under the weight of snow, and the winds seemed to whisper warnings through the pines. Strange noises echoed at night cries that could not belong to any known animal. Fear began to take hold, and even the most experienced explorers felt the grip of unease. The Dyatlov group faced the harshest part of their journey, the Ural Mountains. Temperatures plummeted far below freezing, and snowstorms made visibility near zero. Each step forward was a battle against nature itself. Tensions among the hikers grew, but their determination kept them moving. They set up camp at the base of the mountain, unaware that the night ahead would change history forever. As night fell, something strange began to unfold. The hikers acted oddly. Some reports suggest they cut open their tent from the inside and fled into the freezing darkness, dressed inadequately for the conditions. Footprints were later found, some barefoot, leading into the snow. What drove them to abandon their shelter in the dead of night remains one of the greatest mysteries of the Dyatlov Pass incident. Fear, confusion, or something unseen, no one knows for certain. On January 28th, the world saw the Dyatlov group for the last time. They left the small settlement of Vizay behind, walking deeper into the frozen wilderness with no one but each other. This was the final place where warm roofs, familiar voices, and any sign of safety existed. As they moved north, the landscape changed. The trees grew thinner, the wind harsher. Their route led toward the base of Otorten Mountain, a place the local Mansi people believed to be dangerous, not because of superstition, but because the weather there could kill even the most experienced travelers. Still, spirits were high. The group joked, laughed, took pictures, and documented everything as if nothing could touch them. But this was the point where the world began to lose track of them. No more settlements. No more witnesses. No more signs of life. From here on, every step they took was a step toward the unknown. As the Dyatlov group pushed forward, the terrain became harsher with every step. The winds grew stronger, the temperature dropped sharply, and visibility began to fade behind a wall of drifting snow. Still, they pressed on, determined to reach the summit of Otorten. One of the last photographs recovered from their cameras shows the hikers struggling through a blizzard, their silhouettes barely visible. Another captured the moment they approached the open, frozen expanse that locals called Kolatsyakla, the Mountain of the Dead. To the Mansi people, this was a cursed place, a region where spirits were said to roam and travelers often vanished. Despite the brutal weather and the ominous reputation of the mountain, the group made the decision to stop on the slope and set up camp instead of descending into the tree line for shelter. It was a choice that has puzzled investigators and historians for more than 6 decades. These final images, the last moments ever recorded by the expedition, leave us staring into the same mystery. What really happened after the cameras went silent? As darkness fell on the slope of Kholat Syakhl, the storm intensified. Winds roared across the mountain like a living thing, shaking the Dyatlov group's lone tent. Inside, the hikers tried to settle in for the night, unaware that in just a few hours, their quiet camp would become the center of one of the greatest mysteries of the 20th century. Sometime deep into the night, something happened. Something so sudden, so terrifying, that all 9 hikers cut their way out of the tent from the inside and fled into the frozen darkness without their boots, coats, or gear. The official investigation later determined the tent had been slashed open deliberately. But why? There were no signs of an avalanche, no warnings from the terrain, and no marks of a violent struggle inside. Yet the hikers ran some barefoot, some half-dressed into temperatures that plunged below -25 degrees Celsius. They scattered into the night, leaving behind all the equipment that could have saved them. The only thing investigators could agree on was chilling. Whatever drove them out, it must have terrified them more than the deadly cold. Morning came quietly over Kholat Syakhl, but the Dyatlov camp was disturbingly still. Hours passed without movement. No one emerged from the tent. No smoke rose from a fire. The peaceful white landscape hid something deeply wrong. When rescuers eventually searched the area days later, the first clues appeared just a short distance downhill. Bare footprints, some from socks, some completely barefoot, traced a chaotic path away from the tent. What startled investigators was how calm and orderly the steps looked. There were no signs of running, no signs of stumbling. Almost as if the hikers had walked into the night in a strange, controlled state. There were no signs of running, no signs of stumbling. Almost as if the hikers had walked into the night in a strange, controlled state. This discovery raised terrifying questions. Why had they left the tent without clothing? What forced them to seek refuge under a tree so far away? And why did the footprints show no sign of panic, even though the circumstances were clearly deadly? The mystery deepened. The forest revealed the first victims, but it would not be the last. Beneath the towering cedar, investigators saw signs of a frantic struggle for survival. Broken branches littered the ground, some from as high as 5 meters above. It was clear someone had climbed the tree, desperately. When searchers looked up, they found the bark shredded and branches snapped, as if a hiker had clawed their way upward in the dark. But why? To escape something? To search for the camp? Or to flee from whatever had driven them into the frozen forest? The 2 bodies found at the tree's base showed burns on their hands and legs, evidence they tried to light a fire to survive the brutal cold. The scorched wood, the small flames that once flickered, all of it told a story of panic mixed with determination. But the most unsettling detail was above. A scrap of cloth was found snagged high in the branches. It suggested someone had climbed up far beyond what was normal, far beyond what made sense, especially in the pitch-black freezing night. The cedar tree stood as a silent witness to the hikers' final efforts, a place where hope briefly fought against terror and lost. Not far from the cedar, searchers spotted a deep snow-covered ravine. At first, it looked untouched, a smooth, white slope disappearing into darkness. But as rescuers pressed deeper, they saw something beneath the frost. Something human. Inside the ravine, sheltered under several feet of snow, lay 4 of the missing hikers. Unlike the others, these bodies were dressed more warmly, jackets, boots, even fragments of extra clothing. It was clear, these 4 had survived longer, long enough to strip clothes from the dead in a desperate fight against hypothermia. But the real horror revealed itself during examination. These weren't simple cases of freezing to death. 3 of the hikers showed massive internal injuries, crushed ribs, shattered bones, with no external wounds to explain the force. One had a collapsed chest cavity, another a broken skull, injuries described by experts as similar to a car crash, not a fall. And the most infamous detail, one of the hikers was found missing her tongue, along with parts of her lips and facial tissue. Official reports suggested decomposition in flowing water. But to this day, many believe something far stranger happened in that ravine. They died hidden from the storm, buried in snow and darkness. But their injuries left behind some of the most disturbing questions of the entire Dyatlov mystery. As the last bodies were recovered from the ravine, investigators hoped the mystery would finally make sense. Instead, everything became even stranger. The condition of the hikers, the torn clothing, the scattered footprints, nothing fit a clean explanation. The medical reports only added to the confusion. 6 hikers died of hypothermia, but 3 suffered massive internal trauma. Injuries so severe that experts said the force resembled a high-speed collision, not a fall or fight. Their clothing tested positive for radiation, an unexplained detail that fueled endless theories. Authorities offered no clear answer, and families demanded to know what really happened in the frozen pass. Even the final camp layout raised questions. Why had the tent been cut open from the inside? Why had experienced hikers fled half-dressed into deadly temperatures? And how did 9 people, trained, calm, physically strong, all fall victim within just a few hours? Investigators pieced together timelines, weather patterns, and terrain maps. But every time they thought they were close, another detail pushed the truth further away. In the end, the official conclusion was simple: a compelling natural force. But everyone who studied the case knew that phrase explained nothing. The deeper the investigation went, the darker and more confusing the Dyatlov mystery became. As investigators examined the bodies found in the ravine, they immediately noticed something deeply unsettling. Unlike typical hypothermia victims, these hikers showed massive internal damage, yet almost no external wounds. Lyudmila Dubinina had multiple fractured ribs and severe internal bleeding, injuries comparable to a car crash, not something caused by falling in snow. Semyon Zolotaryov showed similar trauma: crushed ribs, a chest cavity forced inward with tremendous force. But the strangest part? There were no cuts, no bruises, no shattered skin. It was as if something had struck them with enormous pressure, without ever touching them. For the Soviet forensic team, this made no sense. There was no evidence of an avalanche, no signs of a violent attack, and no natural explanation that matched the sheer force required. These were injuries the lead investigator would later describe only as a power beyond human strength. After the bodies were found, attention shifted to the camp itself. The tent had been sliced open from the inside, as if the hikers had tried to escape in a sudden panic. Inside, the investigators found abandoned belongings: clothes, boots, and personal items scattered haphazardly in the snow. The footprints outside were just as strange. Some were barefoot, leading into the forest, while others wore shoes all moving in different directions, none returning to the tent. Even stranger, some footprints ended abruptly, as if the person had been lifted or disappeared into thin air. The investigators reconstructed the scene countless times, but the pattern made no logical sense. Why had the hikers left the warmth of the tent in the middle of a freezing night? Why had they cut their way out rather than use the entrance? The answers remained elusive, leaving the Dyatlov Pass mystery deeper and darker than ever. The search teams pushed deeper into the Dyatlov Pass. Snowstorms raged, visibility dropped, and even the most experienced rescuers felt a chilling unease. Strange sounds echoed through the mountains, cracking ice, whispers carried by the wind, and footsteps where no one stood. Some teams reported bright flashes on the snow, sudden gusts of freezing wind, and unexplainable footprints that led nowhere. Even the terrain itself seemed to shift, as if the forest itself resisted their presence. By nightfall, rescuers huddled around their fires, fear replacing curiosity. Stories of faint cries and shadows moving among the trees circulated, unsettling the seasoned men. The mountains were no longer just a landscape of snow. They had become a silent predator, watching every move, hiding secrets that the rescuers were never meant to find. Even after decades, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains unsolved, and many theories attempt to explain the tragedy. Theory 1: Avalanche. Some suggest that a sudden avalanche forced the hikers to flee their tents in panic. The injuries, scattered clothing, and partially buried bodies could fit this scenario, but no large avalanche traces were ever found, and some injuries seemed too deliberate or strange to be explained naturally. Theory 2: Military experiment, secret tests. Others propose that military tests or secret weapon experiments in the area caused the deaths. Strange injuries, radiation traces on some clothing, and the hikers' sudden flight from the tents support this, but no official records confirm any experiments in that area. Whatever happened that night, the mountains keep their secrets. The Dyatlov Pass tragedy continues to haunt historians, hikers, and curious minds alike. Some say if you visit the pass today, you can still feel the eerie silence and sense of fear that overtook the hikers on that fateful night in February 1959. The Dyatlov Pass still hides its secrets. What do you think really happened here? Comment below. If you dare,